Okay, I think without further ado, we'll get this meeting started. We start with a roll call, please.
Sandino Thompson.
Present.
Omar Curry.
Present.
Jonathan Dotson. Mark Crittenbrink. And Tom Wilson.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. We'll go to approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. See item number 3, there are none. 4, there are none. 5, there are none. Item 6, cases for individual consideration. Item 6A is BCA 16-00007. Do we have information from staff on this item?
Yes, this is a proposal for a 10-story hotel located on the east side of Charlie Christian Avenue between East Sheridan and East Reno in the easterly part of the Bricktown Core Development District. You can see the location here. The Spring Hill Suites Hotel to the north under construction. Criterion Theater just recently opened. Steelyard Apartments just opened. Sheridan under construction. And the Chevy Bricktown Events Center to the west with the surface parking lot also located to the west across Charlie Christian. So some of the pictures of the building that exists on the site today. It's a vacated former auto body facility, collision center. Hasn't been in operation for at least a year or so. That part of the application would be to demolish this structure. And then here's some of the photos of the buildings that are located around the project site, including the McDonald's at the corner of Charlie Christian and Reno, and the gas station at Reno and Lincoln. It's the site plan of the project site. The hotel is situated toward the west of the property. This is kind of an initial phase of a master plan for the project site, which will, at least at this point in time, we've been informed would include ultimately a center structured parking building with perhaps some other hotels on the site as well. But at this time, what you're looking at today is just the hotel on the west side of the site with the surface parking lot that stretches over to the Lincoln frontage of the property. And here you can see the McDonald's at the corner and then the Conoco gas station at the opposite corner. We've identified for you in a staff report only one significant issue, and it really is just a guideline. The guideline reads that new construction is encouraged to maintain a height limit of 80 feet unless a greater height is compatible with existing buildings located on the same block or either side of the street. This block does not have any buildings that are anywhere near this tall. The tallest building is the one under construction, the Spring Hill Suites at the north west corner of the block at Sheridan and Charlie Christian. That's only a 5-story structure. This one comes in at 118 feet tall. So as a guideline, and using the literal sense of that guideline, there are no other structures that can be used to support the height that is proposed in this application. However, there are some other taller buildings that are located one block to the west on the south side of Sheridan between Joe Corder and Mickey Mantle. The Hilton Garden Inn Homewood Suites is a 120-foot tall structure, and adjacent to that is a Hampton Inn and a parking garage that are both approximately about the same height. And then outside of the BC district is the Marriott Renaissance Hotel on the south side of Reno, which is right across from the Chevy Bricktown Events Center. Additionally, the recently adopted downtown development framework does encourage higher density and taller structures in the eastern portion of the Bricktown district. And so as a consequence of all those considerations, the staff report is recommending that the committee approve this project. And that concludes our presentation.
All right, questions for staff? Michael, I did have one, just to kind of help me get understanding. So I think the issue that you kind of brought up with the height and things like that, I think they're definitely consistent with what we've discussed, but I'm also thinking about it in the broader standpoint of what the other kinds of developments that may come in the future look like. So you kind of mentioned that there was a master plan for the site, and I think we kind of know that by the way that the site was put together. So what is there different expectations, since we know that this site is kind of being looked at least to be developed comprehensively? Because we just have this proposal sort of to review today, and so it hints at a lot of other details, but it's hard to kind of incorporate those into, the review of what's before us today, and really thinking about the fact that what we wouldn't want necessarily is, a sort of tower that sticks out sort of inconsistent with everything else that gets developed around it.
I don't have a lot of particulars with respect to the other two potential hotels on the site. I know the general locations. I do not know the height. I expect the applicant can speak to the proposed height of those structures, but my guess is they are not going to be as tall as this building. I do know that the center core parking structure is pretty much intended to cover this center portion of the parking lot, with hotels to the east and to the north. That's just a general concept. The reason those things are not here before you today is because they haven't finalized the design concepts and they're not ready to present and have those things approved to you today. So. Sure.
So from your understanding of the ordinance and guidelines that we do have in place, let's say, we evaluated this sort of on an individual basis. Just as maybe as a little bit of an opinion, I hope you understand what I'm kind of trying to get at. So would we then be really expected to evaluate the other sites as sort of individuals, or as individual review, or would we really be looking at it more comprehensively for the impact that it has in this sort of master plan?
We'll present the information we have available to you when we have it, and I can say that from what I have seen of what the future plans are, I think that are a number of things that we would want to have them alter and revise. I think the whole idea of wrapping the parking structure ultimately in the center of the site with structures so that it is as hidden as possible is a good concept, and we're behind that. It's part of what our guidelines do talk about. Especially the guidelines that the committee has recently recommended approval of recently to the Planning Commission. So I think overall, some of what you're seeing here does set a bit of a footprint for the future development, particularly some of the access points that you're seeing from Lincoln and from Charlie Christian. But aside from that, I think it's pretty clear that some of these surface lots will be converted to structures ultimately in the future, and then the northerly part that is totally vacant at this point in time would also likely see some development. It's hard to speak to the nature of those projects without having all the full developmental detail on those applications.
I want to add to what Michael's saying. You have to approve this project as standalone, because none of the other stuff may happen. It may happen in a different form. So this is what's before you. But it comes up on a lot of other districts when we talk about matching the existing and the character. And the first one in gets to set the character, and that's how we practiced on other reviews.
Anything beyond this would be subject to a future application, correct?
Yeah.
Separate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think that kind of gets. I was just wanting to make sure I had the right train of thought. So thank you guys for that response. All right. Is the anything else, Michael? Okay. Is the applicant present?
Thank you. I'm Rick Brown with RBA Architects, and I'm here to respond to whatever questions, or I can go into a presentation. I've got some materials that you asked for the last time we were here. I also have a couple new renderings that I'd like to show you. So the project, as much as Michael talked about, is, you know, it's the same as what it was when we brought it to you the first time, so I don't want to be redundant, but the just to speak sort of the kind of overall master plan real briefly, we're not asking for any kind of approval of that, but the master plan is to put a center parking garage and then wrap it with other projects. It's not far enough along to really speak to it individually. There are a couple of other hotels that are signed for the deal. Neither of them will be likely over 6 stories, I don't think, as it looks like right now, because the main component of the entire development is the Canopy Hotel. This will be the highest end hotel that'll be on the site. We want to maintain the exposure of the hotel primarily from the highway network, so it'll be you know, at least 3 stories taller than the other hotels around. The parking garage, it looks like, will likely be 3 or 4 stories tall, and they're shorter footprints, or it's a big footprint, but shorter in stature. So we don't want to block views from the hotel either. So you know, the tough part about it, as I mentioned the last time, is working around a huge storm sewer easement that we have running through the north central part of the site, which is a real challenge for additional development. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, it kind of goes where he's moving up on the top of the site. We are planning to, as soon as it's approved and we get a demolition permit, to take down the old body shop there so we can do some additional soils testing and that kind of thing. So, you know, projected construction start early fall. We are getting pretty far along with drawings and the interiors. You might go to that sidewalk. Do I have control of that one right there? And one of the comments that we had before was to, you know, really take a look at what that streetscape was and make sure that we were engaging it and trying to really animate that streetscape. So, you know, with a combination of paving patterns and, you know, trees, the entire lobby of the building opens up with glass to the sidewalk. It's, you know, the canopy concept, the Canopy Central is really a sidewalk cafe that kind of bleeds out onto the sidewalk from the hotel interior. So we've tried to capture some seating, both kind of sofa, waterproof sofa seating with tables and chairs, you know, trying to get some nice lighting and trees, you know, facing the west elevation. That's going to present a few problems, but with appropriate shading and that sort of thing, I think we can make it a comfortable space. The other thing on the left side, you can see one of the things that we've detailed a little bit more since our last meeting was to create a drop-off area at the sidewalk so that, you know, there's a place to pull out of the traffic with a couple of cars queuing space, so that, you know, we have a nice drop-off, and there's a that you can see in the elevation and in the renderings. I'll show you kind of a freestanding canopy that comes out over that area. Yeah, you can kind of see that in the side elevation. It's not a full porte-cochere, but it's a little bit of cover for a drop-off there at the entrance. From an elevation standpoint, materials are a burgundy brick with a dove gray accent and a cement plaster product on the exterior with curtain wall glazing that's 2 different colors, the dark gray and the blue glass. The top floor is a rooftop bar restaurant concept that we're trying to get put together. We don't have that deal completely signed up yet, but we're moving ahead with it in construction, so that once that deal gets done, we'll just have to do the interior fit out for the restaurant. Rooftop bar and pergola on top. You can kind of see the animation on the rooftop, which we think is going to be a great view to downtown, and the height of the building will help that as well, I think. We've put 4 elevators, so we've got at least one redundant elevator that'll provide access just to the rooftop bar and restaurant. I do have some new renderings that might want to get a closer look. These are similar views. One's looking in one direction, one from the other, to kind of give you a little bit better perspective in the sense of what the building looks like. So that gives you a little better perspective on kind of materials and sort of the overall mass of the building. Clearly, once we get some additional buildings developed on the site, the density will look a little bit more urban than that, but I think that'll benefit the project more than anything. You can see the canopy. It's a little hard to tell where the canopy comes out, but it's kind of a concrete L-shape, upside-down L-shaped portal with suspended stainless steel beams, and then suspended below that's a glass kind of canopy that comes out over the car drop-off right there. And then we've got a combination of metal awnings in the front with stainless steel and glass awnings along the glass wall in the front, and then a fair amount of seating in the front. This is the back elevation, very similar, change in window size slightly and change a little bit of the detailing, the views not being quite as dramatic from there, but still we've got big windows and tried to maintain a nice elevation from the rear as well, because that's the elevation that faces the highway. So material-wise, brick and plaster, and then those are the 2 colors of brick that we're working with currently. Cement plaster product that's gives it the objective, because the whole canopy concept is kind of this new industrial sort of look. We're trying to do something that kind of fits with that overall image, and so that's kind of there's the kind of reductive industrial factory kind of look really fits here, and we think fits really well with Bricktown, which is one of the reasons that attracted them a lot to the site. So we're excited about the project. I don't want to be too lengthy in my discussion because I've gone through it before, but any questions that you have, please ask, and we'll try to respond to them.
Rick, I just have a couple of questions on the stair towers on either side of the hotel. Is your intent to have brick all the way down, or the concrete panels? I see them.
The stair, leave it on that elevation. The brick wraps around, but then where the stair tower comes out is where it changes to plaster, and then it wraps at the other end of that pop out. It wraps around with brick and wraps around to that other side, and then the kind of linear looking element that's on the right side is though actually on each floor we have a mechanical room on each end, so that those are just kind of an anodized louver is what that is, full height.
So the brick on both sides of the hotel, the north and the south, engages the sidewalks and the street level. It's not going
That's
all
right.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually goes down to a cast stone base, but the brick goes down to that, yeah.
I'd just like to get some clarification. We're talking about raw plaster. We're talking about plaster, not EFS.
Correct.
Okay.
Stole my question.
Well, you can ask it. You can ask it just to make sure.
I just had no styrofoam,
Yeah,
right?
the sample's a little confusing because, I mean, we're trying to work with a plaster to get what we wanted, and it's kind of hard to get them to do a full thick plaster sample and haul it back and forth, so.
I have one other question. The section of the property to the north of the access drive off of Charlie Christian, that's an existing building?
The
Yeah.
little building right
Yes.
That's another part of the auto body center.
Yeah, well, the plan is to take down all of the existing buildings after this on the site. All of that, the plan is for all that to be gone.
But for this application, that site is being, you're not making any changes to that at all. You're going to leave that building as is currently.
No, the plan is to go ahead and take it all down.
I understand.
In this application,
in this-
that
Okay,
building is
okay,
not
I'm
coming
sorry.
down.
Okay.
There is demolition of an existing building on this side,
Yes.
but none of the others.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? I did have a few comments. You good, Tom? Okay, so one of the things that I think you clarified kind of on the materials. So the one question I had, well, one was the cement piece. The accents that are sort of the bands in between the brick going vertically. What materials are those?
The vertical bands are the lighter colored dove gray brick that
Okay.
you have a sample of.
Okay. So it's just several tones of brick and then
It's
the cement.
two
basically.
different colors of brick, and then the square piece in the center is a cast stone piece where the intersection happens.
Okay, okay. So the other questions I had, and I guess in general, even sort of in keeping with the questions that I had for the staff, were I think the design, and we gave you some feedback, it seems like you guys, I think you presented a pretty solid design. We're obviously excited about the building, and I think even the height and the sort of, some of that kind of massing makes sense. But I'm just a little concerned in general, not necessarily with what you guys have presented around parking and landscaping. And knowing that the plan is to develop this site over a period of time, just really concerned about creating more massive, parking lots in what should be an urban district. And that concern's a bit heightened on this side because we made some strides in the core of Bricktown to really improve what even the longer-term surface parking lots look like and that thing, especially when they come up for review. But now as we go towards the further to the east and we get closer to Lincoln, for me at least personally, it's kind of important that we maintain that expectation that if we're going to have surface parking lots, that we're doing them in a way that either makes them a really nice use or that they're hidden and sort of covered up.
Yeah.
And so I think some of the concern is just without knowing the details of the broader master plan and knowing that some of those things could change, what's presented for the landscaping and the plan for the parking, I'm a little concerned about from that standpoint. Like I say, not again with your overall design, but it just seems like it's a little basic.
Well, one of the things that I can tell you for sure is that this plan is probably not going to get executed like this in terms of parking and landscaping. We're working on a parking garage design and kind of an overall master plan. We're just not ready to bring it to you and say, here's what we're doing and show it to you. But on the other hand, the plan is to put a parking garage on the site. It'll be a separate project, so we won't ask for approval of that in conjunction with this. We'll bring it separately. But the likelihood is that as this is being built, we'll also build that additional project and we'll bring to you more of a master planned overall site. But the concept is to have the 4-story parking garage in the center of the site with buildings around it. Again, the more difficult process is trying to figure out how we deal with that big storm sewer.
Sure.
Because it's, it's huge,
Sure.
right through the middle of the top end of the site. So it really makes it difficult to plan around, although I think we've got a pretty good solid master plan in process. We've got 2 other hotels that want to be there, and the possibility that we're even going to build housing on top of the parking garage. So there's a much bigger, broader understanding of the site that's in process. We're just not ready to bring it to you just yet, but it will densify the overall site substantially, and we won't be, I completely agree with you. We don't, this is not a district where we want a lot of surface parking, and, it's just not that kind of project, so.
Yeah, well, and I think, just to go along with that, within context, I get that you're going to build a 10-story hotel, like you need parking. I think it's just if we didn't know there was a garage, I would be pretty steadfast on the expectation that that parking lot, just really look consistent with the overall district.
Right.
So then the concern now, and it really has a lot less to do with you all, but just has to do with sort of the precedent for the district in general,
Sure.
is that when we sort of water down those expectations now, so in keeping with what you guys have proposed, I'm just concerned that as other developments sort of get planned, we actually start going backwards on what the design of these parking lots start to look like.
Michael, the parking lot that's shown meets the
Yeah,
landscape.
I did want to make a
yes.
couple comments. The design of this parking lot does meet our minimum standards for parking lot landscaping and design. I'll be the first one to raise my hand and tell you that we probably need to improve our parking lot standards, but at this point they meet the current standards. The applicant did accommodate us by coming back with a redesign of this area by the throat from Lincoln, because they did not initially show us the 5-foot landscape buffer that is required along this side, and they also reconfigured the parking stalls in this area to give us a longer throat depth off of Lincoln, so we can try and give it, and that's not even a requirement. We just work with them on that, and they were very accommodating. So, and I think the other reason you're not going to see a lot of extra improvements or enhancements done in this center a lot is because if the plan is ultimately to build a structure here, you don't want to put a lot of money into that part of the parking lot.
And most of the landscape guidelines are about screening from the street. So since this
Yes.
is an internal lot, just at a glance, you're probably thinking, oh, the edges don't have enough landscaping, but the edges aren't at a street or sidewalk. And I think that's part of what you're observing.
Okay, and that may help me a bit, because I think one of the things that I was kind of struggling with, and I do get, plan views versus elevations and things of that nature, but I don't know if there was any elevation or detail on the landscaping plan that I saw. And we had one on the frontage to the hotel, but not on that backside.
Right.
But am I also correct in saying that, I know it looks like an easement there, so are we considering this not to be fronting the street because of that easement in front of Lincoln?
It does front, Lincoln is the only street it does front,
Right.
but it's only for like 50 feet.
And that's why the 5-foot buffer was there.
Yeah, okay. And I think that maybe helps with the concern I was expressing a bit.
Well, we hope to very soon be able to bring a master plan into you. We want to, get with Mike and sort of run it through him first and get him to comment before we get in front of you guys with it. But we'll bring it to you and let you, take a look at it and make comments before we finalize our design on the overall parking garage and master plan. Hopefully soon, in the next month or two.
All right, are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. So are there any other comments from the audience on this proposal? I know it's a pretty important project for the area. Okay. All right. Well, I think we need to take some action on this item.
Well, I think this is an extremely handsome project. I think it's going to be a great addition to Bricktown. I personally happen to like the height at that end of Bricktown, and I hope your projects, future projects, are equal to it. With that in mind, I move approval.
Okay.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the item? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Yep. Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. Those are heavy. Careful. Yeah. Okay, it looks like that's it for item 6, so we'll move to item 7. And item 7A is ordinance amendment. I believe that this will be staff comments here.
Yes, we're bringing this item back to the committee after the committee did take action on it at the last meeting on April 13th. What happened was that after the committee's recommendation for approval to the Planning Commission, we took it to the Urban Design Commission of the Planning Commission, which is a sub-body, for early consideration and recommendation to agendize this item before the Planning Commission. And at that meeting, there was some concerns raised with respect to the language that was being deleted with respect to restrictions on the content of what in the current code is referred to as artistic graphics, but is now in the current draft now under the umbrella of all murals. The language in question talks about restraining content of murals to features that are architecturally, historically, or culturally significant to the Bricktown area, city of Oklahoma City, or the state of Oklahoma. And as we've laid out for you in the staff report, that was in reaction to a proposal for a mural that included a whale by Robert Weiland. We can tell you that the Bricktown Association and Downtown OKC have been with us on this particular issue for quite some time, and they are very supportive of trying to have that language removed. I think that we've laid out for you also the concerns that there are with respect to this language in terms of the First Amendment. So, kind of recap, the version that you approved last month basically removed this restriction. The question before you today, we brought it back to you for input, is to determine whether or not that language should be retained in some form. And we've recommended to you that if you do feel it should be retained, that the language should be changed from shall to should and moved from regulations to guidelines. So we're just basically back before you to get your direction on that matter so that we can finalize the text for the Planning Commission and their consideration of the amendment.
Okay, so to make sure I'm understanding, basically there was feedback as this got pushed forward, and based on that feedback, you're bringing it back to us to sort of either reconfirm or...
We felt it was important to get your input on this aspect, yes.
Okay.
And we're actually, technically, we're bringing the whole thing back, so we're asking for a re-recommendation of the entire whole thing, specifically with input on the mural.
All right. So, Michael, no, you didn't slide in other changes that we're not covering. No. Okay. So, are there questions on this item for any of the committee members? I think as being a patron and a resident or an officer in Bricktown, I do get the desire to sort of improve some of the ability to do the art. I think it may be prudent for us to maybe go with the staff's recommendation versus just reconfirming. Just from the standpoint, I think it maybe gives the same latitude that they're looking for with DOKC and others to be able to do this kind of work. So that's kind of my thoughts on the item. I don't know if others have thoughts on it.
Could we read the proposed language? Since you have your glasses here.
My guess is that we haven't picked the section that it would go into yet. It'll be moved from regulations to guidelines. I don't have the exact section number for you right now, but it would read that murals in Bricktown should be of historical, architectural, or cultural significance to the Bricktown area, the city of Oklahoma City, or the state of Oklahoma.
So, for instance, we still believe that with that change in the language, it would give the flexibility, because I think these murals and things still have to be sort of reviewed. So we give that flexibility in language to make the determination that, yeah, we think this is the...
Now, all the murals would still go through the same process, which means they visit the Arts Commission first for a recommendation from them to this body. And then at that point, we bring it forward to the committee as a certificate of approval for your review and your discretion to determine whether or not you feel the content is appropriate.
Right, and although, changing it to should does give some latitude, if this language is in the ordinance, it still sets the expectation that the mural content would have one of these things. And so I point that out because that's important as businesses and artists are developing their proposal. They're looking at the guideline and want to know if that's where they must start or not.
Yeah. Is there other feedback? I mean, I know we have the OKC and others here. Is there any other comments on the item?
Hi, I'm Jane Jenkins, 220 Northwest 19th Street with Downtown Oklahoma City Incorporated. I'm actually here for Mallory, who is enjoying a well-deserved vacation in Costa Rica, so we're happy for her, but I'm here. I think that our preference is that you reaffirm your action previously and that you move forward without any reference to historical, whatever the language was there, even though it affords latitude. I agree with Lisa's recommendation that it sets an expectation and may limit what people think that they can do in Bricktown. Bricktown is an evolving place. Tom, I know you've seen a lot of changes, and particularly as you move east of Mickey Mantle, you really start to get a different feel from the old warehouse district as it moves toward Lincoln. I think that there's enough review and respect for what the people in Bricktown would want that that without any reference to it, as you have recently affirmed, that we would be okay. And I think that that's what we would ask you to do. I'm going to stay up here and sign in. So.
All right. Other feedback from staff? So other questions from the committee members on this item?
If we leave the ordinance the way it currently is, or we recommend approval as it currently is, we still have the discretion to accept or deny any applicant based on its content. Is that correct?
I haven't really had a chance to review this ordinance since I just stepped in, but
Yeah, Laura had to step out.
but I would think that you really can't get into the content, but you could look to see whether or not maybe it's appropriate for the area or something like that, but not really based upon the content.
Yeah, I mean, but as it stands today, I mean, the murals come before, they do come before us to review, and we sort of either approve or deny.
And they're not coming to us as a blank sheet of paper. They're coming to us with finished content on it.
Yeah.
By the time the committee sees it, it has already gone to Arts Commission to affirm its artistic integrity and the artist's ability to execute the work.
Just a point of clarification, what criteria does the Arts Commission use to evaluate it?
Yeah, just what I said. They look at the artist's resume, They look at their past history in executing the work. That's pretty much it. And they also look to some extent at the location and how the location affects the look or style of the mural. But the committee would also be very involved in the location approval.
I'm fine with the ordinance the way it is. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be changed.
Okay. Sure.
I think that if it's on private property, like a building to a mural, that the property owner has to approve the design and the art. It'd be a little different if it were on a public space, correct? Okay. Just making sure.
Tom, when you say leave it as it is, do you mean leave it not in there or leave it as it?
I think it's,
Do not amend.
right.
Do not amend the ordinance that we approved last time.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments? I'm kind of swayed. I'm really on the fence. I think I want to do the thing that allows us to continue to create the kind of excitement and atmosphere that's been happening. So that's really what I'm interested in. But without having, a bunch of pink and purple painted buildings necessarily running all over the place. So, Steve, you wanted to? Yeah. Yeah, but that's in Film Row. That's not in Bricktown.
I'm Steve Hurst. I'm president of the Bricktown board, and I live at 3901 Red Deer Crossing in Edmond. And I think my opinion on this is, as everybody has said, it's evolving. However, if we currently keep the language as it is, I think it really curtails us on the ability to evolve. For example, we just did the underpass at Reno underneath the railroad trellis. It has no historical significance to Bricktown, but it's beautiful, right?
Right, but it's not in Bricktown.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I know that we paid for the sign on the other side of it.
No, well, I think,
But your point,
to your point, though,
But-
it's not in the jurisdiction of the committee, but it did go through
Correct.
the downtown review.
So I also agree with Tom to the fact that we need to have the ability to turn down things that are offensive to the community. So I want to have the latitude to progress and validate good art without it having to be historical or to Bricktown in and of itself. But I also want you to have the ability to turn things down should it be offensive. That's my opinion. Because you do open Pandora's box to some degree.
yeah, well, I think even without language about the suggested content, the committee still has everything about the purpose and intent and urban character to always reference back to.
Right. So if you keep that broad language, I think to put in there that it should have it, that's just kind of worthless because everybody will look past that. But if you have the ability as the procurers of taste, for lack of a better word, for the Bricktown district, which you guys do, and then you have the ability to turn it down, that they can't come back and say, well, we've met this. You ought to have discretion to turn it down. But you also ought to have the latitude to do things other than historically significant to Bricktown. Or it's going to be pretty lame. We need to keep going.
Okay. All right. Other comments? I think we can probably entertain, or I'd be willing to entertain a motion at least on action.
I would move that we recommend approval of the existing ordinance as presented to us without further amendment.
Okay. It's been moved.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion on the item? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. Okay, I think that's all of other business for us. So item 8A is presentations. Item 8A1 is a presentation by Charles Locke, Code Enforcement Superintendent. Is there any staff comments on this item?
Yeah, at our last meeting, several committee members had questions about the parking lot at 400 East Sheridan, the one next to the Criterion, and there was a lot of press about 2 months ago about whether or not people were legally or illegally parking there and what they needed to do to go forward. So I asked Charles Locke, our Code Enforcement Superintendent, to answer any further questions. The last thing I agreed to with our department and Charles's was that there is an approved CA. They have 2 years to execute it. If they're using the parking lot as a parking lot in the meantime, the applicant is required to get a building permit, and that they were given a deadline by which to apply and procure that building permit. And if they hadn't done that by the deadline, they were going to be cited for failure to obtain a building permit. And I looked up this morning on Acela and talked to Jeff Hines. They have not applied for a permit.
That's correct.
Yeah, but even though the discussion was about this property in particular, I wanted Charles to just give a kind of a broad brush on how things come to his attention, what they do, some of the timelines, because as I was explaining last time, the timelines are much longer than anybody wants to see, but we always ask everyone to trust that it is moving. So, Charles, thanks for coming.
I have one quick question first. The certificate allows them 2 years to begin the project?
To finish the project.
To finish the project.
And so the expiration on that CA is October 2017.
Okay. All right. Mr. Locke, I appreciate you for joining us this morning.
Any questions that you have, be more than happy to answer.
All right. Well, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I wasn't here for the meeting, I think, when this item came up. I guess I would like to understand maybe what the particulars are. Let's just say hypothetically, using this parking lot as a case, the one that's next to the Criterion, what the so where do we stand now as far as what the status of that is, and then what are the remedies moving forward to sort of enforce at least what we felt like we were approving? And I think I'm maybe capturing the sentiment by we were very specific during the design review that we'd like to see the parking lot improved and really put into use, again, in keeping with what you've seen take place over the past several years with other folks and a lot of property owners voluntarily improving the parking lots to just be more in keeping with the district.
Yes. When we reviewed the CA, the intent of it was, for him to improve his lot, and we understand that. Problem with some of that, when you, the part of your CA, that when you allow 2 years to complete, the owner and the owner's attorney will interpret that as they have 2 years to complete the project, they can use the property. Of course, the city's version of it, or the view of it is that, that he should meet the criteria before he can use that parking lot. That's why we're writing citations at this time. Right now, I believe we've checked it probably 10 to 12 times. We've found it in operation 3 of those times to where they were actively collecting money in that lot. We've filed, we've submitted for review for the city attorney's office 6 citations. Those have not been approved yet. We have 3 very sound citations, which are the no building permit. The 3 that are questionable are the citations that we're writing on not complying with the CA. And most of it is based on that little 2 year window that we're giving them. I mean, Susan can tell you, we have very limited powers on, stopping people from actually doing something. I mean, we're limited to filing charges in our municipal court.
Sorry. So back to the item about them needing to acquire a building permit and the deadline on that. So are you familiar with that condition as well? Can you give us some?
Well, yes, we issued a notice telling them that we had to find them actually operating the lot first before they were in violation. Mm-hmm. At that point, we could issue the notice basically telling them that they're in violation of their building permit and that they could not use that lot until they obtain a building permit. One of the processes for that building permit is that they have to get an occupancy permit at the end. And of course, our view of it is and also the development center is that they have to develop and maintain that lot in accordance with the building standards, which would mean a lot of the same things that your CA had: lighting, handicap parking, striping. One of on the CA is that he striped it, but it's not in accordance with the CA. He basically striped it just to start charging for it, I would assume. But at that point, after we found him using the lot, we gave him a notice. The notice period expired. The times we've caught him using it after that, we've filled out a citation to be reviewed by the city attorney's office to see if they'll file the charge or not.
So I have a question. I'm not sure who this is for. What action or what opportunities does the city have to enforce somebody who occupies a building and uses it inappropriately or illegally? What recourse is there for that?
A citation would be issued.
That's the only thing you can do is a citation.
That's what we're limited to.
Some citations are more severe than others, though.
The citations that we're talking about are a maximum of $500 a day.
And you do have the opportunity, if you get permission, from council to file some type of an injunction. I mean, there's other types of legal action that you could do, but that would have to be done in district court.
That's true. We do that on some cases. We don't file those cases. The city attorneys do that, but that's a possibility. We've actually done that a few times. I don't know if we've actually been to court on any of them yet, but we've started that in a few of the adult entertainment venues.
Charles, does your staff work with the fire marshal when you guys issue citations, or how does that work?
Usually not. We have in the past, but they're usually two distinct different citations, and they're handled in different courts.
Yeah, Charles handles code enforcement. There's another unit that does construction inspections. Okay. that would catch things going on construction projects.
But after
they have the permit, yes.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So if somebody went to the 4th floor of the Spaghetti Warehouse building and just started using it as an office, the only recourse the city would have would be to give them a citation?
I think I answered that earlier about that. I mean, there is the opportunity to file an injunction to prohibit them from violating the code. So there are those two options.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions for Mr. Locke or the staff?
Was the parking lot before this tenant, was it a parking lot before?
It was a steel manufacturing building, I believe.
Oh, so they demoed it.
Yeah, they're parking on the foundation of the old building.
Right. And in fact, the challenging history, I think why it's difficult for a lot of folks who've paid attention to it, is there was a much smaller gravel parking lot that I think some years ago, before either of us were on the committee, there was an approval that was for that parking lot for some improvements to be made. They were never made. There was, I think, a parking shack, for lack of a better term, put up and some other things on that lot based on the overall approval from the committee. But the comprehensive improvements were never made. And so when the applicant brought this case back after having torn down the shed and basically proposed to expand the lot, we're seeing the same sort of behavior, which is why we're very specific as well about what needed to be seen in order for the certificate of approval. So we're seeing the same behavior, whereas they got that initial approval to expand the lot, so they've now expanded the lot, and essentially, I guess, are saying that they'll wait until October 2017, maybe September 29th of 2017 to do anything, if anything's done.
And of course, the city's view is that he cannot do that.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
Appreciate the update. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate you coming and spending time with us this morning. Okay, we will move on. Item, let's see here, 8B is administrative approval reports, and I'll just sort of handle these as a group, Michael, if you don't mind.
The first one is just a series of minor alterations all over the place on the Hyatt hotel approval that was given by this body last fall. We outlined them for you here. Mostly it's just a lot of changes to the signage locations and sizes and landscaping and so on and so forth. Second one is a change to some doors on the west side of the Melting Pot building at 4 East Sheridan. And the third one is just a new sign for that very same building.
Okay. Any questions for staff on the administrative approvals? All right. Seeing none, I'll move on to item 8C.
Yes. You had an item before you at the, I'm guessing it was probably the February or perhaps March meeting, where there was a proposal pursuant to a SPUD that was approved to install some signage on 3 of the surface parking lots in the Bricktown area, one on Reno, one on Oklahoma, and one at the corner of Sheridan and Walnut next to the Tap Works. The action of this body at that time was to deny the certificate of approval. That decision was appealed to the Board of Adjustment, and on April 21st, the Board of Adjustment overturned the denial and approved the signage.
Okay. Questions on that item for staff or comments? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to item 8D, comments from Planning Department staff. Any additional comments?
Yeah, one item, we'll send an email out later today, but you might have already seen it from some other channels. On May 16th, which is Monday night, there's going to be a presentation of a study about the economic impacts of tax credits in Oklahoma, and it's going to, Donovan Ripkema is the consultant, and he was hired by Tulsa Foundation for Architecture, but the planning department is using some of our grant funding to host him here. It's going to be at Joey's PS 700 West Sheridan. It's free. ULI is organizing it and is asking for RSVP, so come on by.
Is the pizza free too?
There's something free later after. Yes.
Okay.
There will be snacks.
I appreciate the update. It would be helpful, at least to me. I don't want to be asked for too much, but if you guys could send out an invite with the details.
Yeah, we'll send it out today.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the Planning Department staff? Okay, seeing none, comments from committee members? All right, item 8F is the next meeting date. It looks like our next meeting will be Wednesday, June 8th, 2016. Is that right?
I that's the date, but I
Okay,
don't...
do we have any items for
I don't think we
consideration?
have any items,
All right,
so it's a chance it's going to be canceled.
okay,
We won't make that decision for another week or two.
okay. All right, great. So we'll hope to have a meeting June 8th, and if there aren't any items, then we'll wait for July, I guess. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved, seconded. We are adjourned.